Hi, this is Vince George with DTMMB Media. Welcome to episode 3 of Standing Up. So once again, I've been thinking this week. Someone mentioned that I should be doing a lot of writing. And so that's one of the things I did this week. I wrote out a story of mine that came from my youth when I was with a girl. But before I get to that, I want to talk about, I started listening to a new podcast. It's Pete Holmes, You Made It Weird. And I find it very interesting, and it really fits this topic that I'm talking about right now. He talked to a lot of stand-up comedians, and they talk about the business and the things that they've gone through and where they currently are in their act and what they think of other comedians. It's really interesting and exactly what I need right now. Today I listened to one that had a comedian on called Delray. He's a 47-year-old comedian. He started out when he was a couple years back. I can't remember maybe he was 42, 43. It was close to my age when he started out. 44. He started out when he was 44. He's been at it for 3 years. He's now 47. So even older than I am. He started to do what I'm doing now. But you could tell, just like myself, he's got a long history of following comedy and knowing comedy. He talked about Bill Cosby albums, which was one of the things I think I mentioned in the first episode. You know, Bill Cosby is almost every comedian's hero in one way or another. I mean, when you listen to him as a kid, he was funny for many, many generations. He was funny for people that were kids because they could kind of relate to his stories with children, and even to older people who had children. So, and another part of his appeal was he wasn't really a blue comic. You know, he was pretty straight-laced and just funny. Great observations, which, you know, maybe the start of that kind of not only observational humor, but the way he portrayed his reactions. You know, there were other comedians out there, but I think, you know, he's one of the ones that kind of hit mainstream, kind of started the comedians being on television. You know, he had the show with Robert Cole, and of course there's the Cosby Show, and I mean, Bill Cosby's probably a whole topic I could spend an hour on. I mean, he transcended race, which was a big deal for a comedian. Probably opened the door for people like Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy to even come around. Can you imagine if Richard Pryor had been before Bill Cosby? I don't even think that would have been possible. Just not with the attitude of the country at the time. So if you really look at Bill Cosby and what he did, his contribution to comedy is just amazing. And again, I could spend hours on that. Well, anyway, back to Dean Delray and Pete Holmes. It was a great conversation. I actually tweeted out to both Dean and Pete, you know, that it was a great show and that he's very inspirational. And the guy's cool. You know, he actually wrote back and retweeted me, thanking me, and to keep on rocking. So that was pretty cool. I'm glad to see. I've had a lot of interaction like that lately with Twitter and some of the things. You know, Twitter's one of those things that has come and gone for me. You know, 1 minute I love it, and the next minute I'm like, I don't get it. I don't see the appeal. Well, this is one of the first time where I've been kind of interacting with, you know, people that I'm actually fans of, people that I'm listening to. A lot of things I listen to, of course, are podcasts, and a lot of the podcasters are out there on Twitter tweeting, so it's kind of easy to have that one-on-one interaction. And, you know, I hope they never forget that it's that kind of interaction that got them where they are today if they're successful. And, you know, maybe I'll be lucky and I'll be successful one day, and I'll remember that. You know, it's the fans that are reaching out to you and actually taking the time to say, hey, I enjoyed your shit, man. They should be able to turn around right back and say, oh, well, thanks a lot. You know, I really appreciate that, because, you know, that's what it's all about. So then beyond that, I saw a clip today. It was Louis C.K. He was on Conan, and he was talking about cell phones. And as he was talking about him, I was thinking, it's not just, you know, he was talking about kids being on there and, you know, having their face down. He's not a big fan. He'd rather see probably kids go out and play, you know, which is a pretty common theme. A lot of people are saying that. But what I was really thinking about was the fact that comedians for the longest time now have been somewhat of our social consciousness, or not consciousness, but social conscience, kind of telling us the way we should be feeling. The fact that they're using humor is kind of what makes it stick and what makes it listen. What the news has become, your Fox News, your CNN, and just the normal, what you call mainstream media, that's become like a talking piece for, it seems like, one side or the other. Of course, the classic example is MSNBC versus Fox. MSNBC has a more liberal approach. Maybe you think they're the soapbox for that side, and Fox is definitely conservative. So with that in mind, we almost have to look to comedians to be that voice that it's not really taking a side. The only side that they're taking is the funny side. And a great example is, of course, when you think about Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert and what they're doing right now. It's no mystery that the number one news source for, I would say, ages 18 to 35 are probably those two shows. If it wasn't for those shows, who knows if they'd even know current events at all. And I don't think that's so bad. Like I said, if you're reading the newspaper, you're watching other mainstream media, it seems like everything has a spin to it. They're trying to push an agenda, or, anymore, they're trying to get your advertising. They don't even care about you. A recent article in The Onion kind of detailed that. It was basically the fact that something like Miley Cyrus was on the front page of CNN, and they actually had a parody of the editor-in-chief saying, the reason we show you this crap is because you eat it up. That's what gets us advertising dollars, and that's what keeps the lights on. And while it was a parody, it's one of the reasons that parody works so well is because of the truth that sits behind it. And so we all know these mainstream media places are basically gearing the news towards things that you want to see, so you will stay there and click on their advertising and watch their sponsors and so on and such forth. I mean, that's how they make money, and that's what they want to do. Now, certainly Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart also want to make money, and their shows need to stay afloat, but they don't necessarily, the people that are tuning in are not people that are going to appeal to those mainstream media. The mainstream media has to be a little more conservative. They're going to sell you dishwashing detergent, where Comedy Central is going to have a different take on their advertising that they sell. They're trying to maybe sell DVDs or of the shows that are on there, subscriptions to things like Netflix. They don't have to pander to, maybe the millennial generation, or not the millennial, I guess the baby boomers. I'm a millennial, for God's sakes, I guess. What am I? Gen X. I'm still Gen X, right? 41? Gen X. I'm saying I'm Gen X. But it really got me thinking about how comedy and comedians are really our compass to tell us what's right and what's wrong anymore. We have to look to them to be the ones that we kind of trust, because their only motivation is to make us laugh, but they're not going to spin it in a way to make us laugh necessarily. If they need to make fun of Obama, they're going to make fun of Obama. If they're going to make fun of Bush, they're going to make fun of Bush. Now, it's true that you might be able to find a liberal slant here and there with anyone that comes out of kind of the entertainment industry. There's arguments to be made that they look at things a different way and kind of see some of the I don't want to offend anybody that's conservative out there, but they see the things that are pushed as the agenda of conservatives, say like the gay marriage. Conservatives are typically against gay marriage. Well, comedians are going to be a little more progressive. Entertainers in general, because they know other gay people, are going to be a little more progressive in the way that they view those things. So that's just kind of the approach, but they're really not trying to spin it to convince you one way or another. And believe me, they'll turn around and make a joke about gay people if they think it's funny, and not necessarily in an offensive way, but they're not afraid. Comedians aren't afraid to make fun of other people or make fun of themselves. And that's what makes the truth and the honesty of comedy really come out. And so that's one of the things I've been, of course, thinking about. this whole time is, if I'm developing an act, one of the things I need to do is learn how to be honest about myself, about my views, and not necessarily try to push an agenda in any way, but just try to be funny. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you this story that I have. It's from a long time ago, several years. I've been married to a great girl for she's a great gal, a great woman for the past 13 years. I got a 10-year-old daughter, so this has happened long before that. I'd say we're probably about 18, 19, almost 20 years ago. So here we go. Now, when I was a younger man, I dated a girl of questionable values. The fact that she was with me at all made it probably all the more questionable. She was constantly cheating on me, though, and generally not very good to me as a boyfriend. I figured the natural progression of her life would probably lead to her taking her clothes off for money anyway, so I did suggest it pretty early on. I gotta say, she took to it pretty quick, and it wasn't a real surprise, I gotta say. I thought there was somewhat of a cool status being involved with a stripper at the time. For one, I felt like the assumption would be that I had a hot girlfriend, since guys would be willing to pay her to take her clothes off, I also thought I was kind of lucky in the fact that I was the guy who went home with her at the end of the night. In other words, I had blinders on. Totally mistaken. Well, as part of her self-promotion, she commissioned some pictures of herself in various states of undress, as well as some that only a gynecologist would probably recognize as being a woman. Several copies of these ended up in my possession, which was great stuff for a guy my age. This was the day before cell phone cameras were available, so there was a certain amount of work that went involved into obtaining such pictures, including development by a very discreet Walgreens picture technician. I was young enough that I still lived at home too, so I had to stash these pictures where they weren't going to be easily found by a snooping parent. I ended up sticking them in between the pages of an old X-Men comic, certainly increasing the value of that issue itself. Time and years passed, including me moving out and doing my own thing. We're talking, like I said, 15, 20 years ago. The closet remained as is during this whole time with the comic intact. Well, one weekend, me and my wife and my daughter were visiting my parents, and they were cleaning out that closet. I saw the stack of comics, and I did panic a little bit. You just don't forget pictures like these, and I immediately knew that I had to make a mad dash for them. If there is indeed a spank bank, then this was the gold in the corner of that vault. When the opportunity arose, I opened the mutant base comic, and there they were. The memories came rushing back, as well as blood to certain parts of my body. I removed these pictures and stuck them in my back pocket, not really having a plan. Of course, during our drive home, I decided that having these on my person, and worse, in my own home, would be a pretty bad idea. I decided to get rid of these as soon as possible. I found this opportunity when we decided to stop at Kohl's to do some quick shopping. Now, you may be thinking, why don't you just toss these things in the trash? I feel like with something like this, you simply don't do that. I mean, these were pictures of a nude girl. You don't just throw them in the trash. Would you flush an unwanted Picasso down the toilet? I separated from my family by saying I was going to the men's section. To get there, I had to travel through the young men's section. And there was the perfect opportunity presented itself. I spotted a rack with some folded Star Wars t-shirts. I approached the shirts, and in one swift motion, for some reason I was worried about cameras. I don't know why. This was just, I was leaving things, not taking any things. But anyway, I put the pictures in between the t-shirts. I think it was somewhere between maybe a Vader and a Yoda. I figured I would give some young, 18-year-old plus person who was a Star Wars fan, a little surprised. I quickly walked away, but I've wondered the results of this action almost every day since. Did I change the life of some young man? Did he one day share these as I did? Paying it forward? Where are these pictures now? Did my ex ever get off meth? These things continue to be a mystery, but I'd like to think that these are possibly my ticket to nirvana as I take my last breath. So that's my story. All right? I mean, it could certainly be tweaked if I ever turn it into an actual, joke. It's kind of long. I have to find a way to kind of compress that down as an easy way to say it. I mean, I could probably at somewhere just come up with a 3 or 4 sentence punchline, basically. Just maybe find other... I've got plenty of crazy stories about this ex-girlfriend, and then mix it in and just, oh yeah, by the way, I had these pictures of her one time, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. I got to try to turn it into something. These are personal stories. These are stories a lot of people haven't heard. Some people that have been really close to me over the years have heard these stories. And I got to figure out something to do with them. So I've got some that are better than others, and oh Lord, there's some from Thailand that I have to figure out how I'm going to tell these things, again, without completely embarrassing my family and friends and having them wonder, who is this person, And again, though, that's part of what I was talking about, the honesty of comedy. I have to be honest about myself. People are not afraid to be self-referential when they're telling these type of stories in a comedic way on stage. You have to expose that nerve. I think that's where a lot of the pain that you see comics go through and hear about. If you listen to a lot of comics, a lot of them aren't very happy people. Some of them are. Some of them are perfectly happy, but some of them have taken those stories and that pain and the things that they went through, and they flip it on itself and turn it into comedy. And maybe that's something I need to do. I'm certainly going to explore it. Well, this has been Vince DeGeorge, and you've been listening to episode 3 of Standing Up. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Oh, by the way, don't forget to visit us at the website, which is DTMMBmedia.com, and also check out the Twitter account, which is at DTMMB Media. Well, it's not dot anything, so it's just at DTMMB Media. No space, nothing, just all one word. Check us out there. It's mostly me tweeting, and I do a lot of the little one-liners that I read last time. Okay, they might not be great, but I think it's worth checking out. And follow me. I don't have a whole shitload of followers yet, and I'd like to have a bunch. My personal account has 1,000. I'd be happy with 1,000. All right, guys. See you next time.
This has been a Don't Tell Me My Business Media production.
Keep that dog quiet!